Hello there. Welcome to my reaction to 10 fascinating lore discoveries in Elden Ring by Vatividia. And I'm not sure what this means. Would it be some kind of correction to his previous videos? Like 10 things that a bit corrected? Maybe some additions to it, or is it just nothing to do with the previous one? It's just 10 lore discoveries overall? We'll see. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Let's begin.
While you were fighting Rennala, did you ever wonder what words her children were singing?
I
It's hard to
did.
make out with all of the chaos going on around you, but if we extract just those voice lines from this fight, then we can hear or
Volumes inside.
read this.
Sleep tight, bound tight by mother's amber.
So, Mother's Amber is Rennala's amber egg. Within this egg is the great rune of the Unborn, a shard of the Elden Ring given to Rennala by Radagon, who is her former husband. And with this rune, she rebirths juvenile scholars over and over again. According to the juvenile scholar set, rebirth is as sleep to them, and with each awakening, memory fades into oblivion. Hence the lullaby.
Sleep tight, find life in mother's umbra.
Now, umbra is basically another word for shadow.
I might as well leave them in.
Specifically, though, an umbra often refers to the region of darkest shadow during a lunar eclipse. So all of a sudden, this line becomes hugely poetic. Rennala is the queen of the full moon.
Hugely poetic.
And her children are being reborn in her umbra, reborn in the shadow of her moon. One of the tiniest little secrets is hidden in Rennala's bracelets from her queen set. And when you equip these bracelets, you don't just equip the bracelet, you equip a tiny ring on your little finger as well.
Oh.
Now, I'm probably reading too much into it, but it's been documented before that wearing a single ring on your little finger can advertise the possession of a costlier piece of jewelry that's put away in store. And that's certainly the case with Rennala, whose boss room has a locked chest that contains Ranni's dark shield ring. This is a ring of betrothal, and it's supposed to be given by Ranni to her consort. This ring was locked away by Princess Ranni herself. The writing that's engraved upon the ring reads, "Whoever thou mayst be, take not the ring from this place. The solitude beyond the night is better mine alone." But with this ring, you can
on a
become
finger that already
Ranni's
has a ring.
consort and unlock a new ending. The ring goes on to say that Ranni is an Empyrean, and any consort of hers would by rights earn the title of Lord. So obviously, betrothal was a really important concept to the royal family, but rings aren't the only symbol of betrothal in this family. According to the Dark Moon Greatsword, it is long-standing tradition for a queen of Caria to bestow a moon greatsword upon her spouse. And as such, you receive the Dark Moon Greatsword when Ranni takes you as her consort at the end of her questline. That's why you receive this sword as a reward. Now, Rennala was once betrothed to Radagon. Where then is his Moon Greatsword? Well, it's actually in the game, but it's quite well hidden, and you might not have thought this was it when you looked at it. It's
the
in
Golden
the
Order
consecrated
sword.
snowfields, wielded by a misbegotten crusader. It's the Golden Order Greatsword. It doesn't look like a moon greatsword, does it? Well, that's because it used to be one.
Was made
of
into
light,
Elden
modeled
Ring.
after the Elden Ring itself, forged by King Consort Radagon to proudly symbolize the tenets of the Golden Order.
Okay, it's
Telltale
annoying. I'm
signs
going to turn on the
betray that
subtitles.
this was once the greatsword bequeathed to him by his first wife, Rennala. Now, Rennala was once betrothed to Radagon. So it wasn't just
There's a statue
forged,
behind her.
it was reforged.
That's proof.
Radagon fought for the Golden Order, but then he married Rennala and was given a moon greatsword. Then when he left Rennala to return to the Golden Order, he reforged his moonlight greatsword into the Golden Order greatsword instead. As for why it's wielded by a misbegotten crusader,
I don't think I
your
know.
guess is kind of as good as mine. I guess a few interesting things to note here is that the misbegotten's hair is red, like Radagon's, and also just that misbegotten in general always seem to be in possession of these legendary armaments. There's also the grafted blade greatsword in Castle Morn.
Damn, he fucked him up with just a crossbow.
At the back of Rennala's room, there is a statue of Radagon. Despite him
Probably
leaving
not
her
just
so
the
long
crossbow,
ago.
but still.
This is the same statue design that was commissioned for the Erdtree capital, the same statue that reveals that Radagon is in fact Marika. If you're not familiar with the concept of
But that one
Radagon
probably
being
doesn't do
Marika, you
that.
should go and watch my previous lore video. The whole point of that video is to lay the groundwork and the foundations for all of the lore that I'll be discussing in the videos to come. I've actually got a few corrections for that video that I'm going to talk about at the end of this video, so stay
there we
tuned
go.
for that. But back to the statue. What I want to talk about isn't the statue exactly, rather it's the backing of the statue, this crisscross pattern, this mesh.
For the
it's
bookshelf.
actually really important to Radagon as a character. It's basically like his seal, it's his symbol. Technically, it's also his Elden rune, and it is something that you start to notice everywhere once you start looking for it.
Such an
For
insane
example,
design.
Radagon's scar seal is an eye engraved with an Elden rune, and his
So is
mesh pattern
Marika's.
is sealed on it. Next, we see this same pattern on the door that blocks access to the Erd Tree. Of course, Radagon is inside the Erd Tree at this point, and his seal is a part of the door that prevents you from entering. Next, we also find it on the Mask of Confidence, in gold thread that's sewn over the mouthpiece in a crossed fashion.
Yeah.
You might think, oh, that's not enough to relate it to Radagon, but the description says, when Radagon married Rennala, he ordered the Carrion magic preceptors to don these masks, to make it clear that all of their matters were to be kept strictly private. And as you probably know, Radagon was indeed keeping a lot of secrets. I want to thank Quelaag, whose work on the lore I respect a ton,
A lot of
pointing
them
out the
is
masks
about
to me.
seals.
And finally, maybe most importantly, this pattern is found
Not the animal
on
ones.
the main menu and on the Elden Ring
Oh
itself.
yeah, it's barely noticeable.
So why
but
does the
it is.
Elden Ring have Radagon's seal upon it? Well, this is probably a new element that was added when Radagon became the vessel for the Elden Ring, perhaps. It's now housed within him, after all, so it makes some sense then that his seal would be represented upon the symbol of the Elden Ring in some way as well. But what does this mesh represent? Well, for one, it's very orderly. It matches the complete
Golden Order.
character of Radagon in terms of a symbol. And I do think a bit of the character is represented in the design, because the Scar Seal item goes on to clarify that these seals represent the lifelong duty of those chosen by the gods. So maybe the seal represents the type of duty that the character takes on. So we know that Radagon takes on a sort of repairing role at some way. So the mesh kind of fits with that, I feel like. The stronger version of the Scar Seal is the Saw Seal, and it goes on to read, "Solemn duty weighs upon one beholden, not unlike a gnawing curse, from which there is no deliverance." And the red seals on these eyes become so embedded in the eye that the shape of the seal becomes barely recognizable at this point. It's a heavy duty.
For me, it looks like the first one is just a seal and it's locked, and this one, when the seal is broken,
Indeed.
it's
Of
more
course,
powerful
Marika
after
has
it's
seal
unsealed.
talismans as well, and as with Radagon, the talismans reveal the shape of her seal as well, and hers is a crucifix. You would have seen this crucifix all throughout the Lands Between. It's present as the symbol of the summoning pool, but beyond that you'll find a ton of crucifixes in Limgrave especially, where there are countless undying, screaming bodies pinned up.
Yeah, I didn't
I'll
put
admit,
two
I
to
have no
together,
idea why
but
these
I did
bodies only
notice.
scream at night. I have no idea why they're being punished or why they're smoldering, so let me know if you have any ideas on that. Marika herself is crucified like this
That was
within
a
the
weird
Erd
cut.
Tree. You could interpret this as her being in shackles for shattering the Elden Ring. After all, the Elden Beast also likes to punish us with a crucifix of its own. But beyond these shackles, it's undeniable that the pose did become a symbol of her entire reign. For example, go and look at the statues of Marika throughout the game.
Yeah.
All of them feature her with her hands flung out to the side, almost as if she's
Who's
mimicking
the person
shape
next
of
to
the
her?
Rune of Death. You could also argue that's the same pose that she has on her little resurrection statues as well. This woman, this god, removed death from
Hands
the
are
land,
lowered, so
and I
it's
think
hard to
that
tell.
this posture is the symbol of that blessing,
And
the
also
symbol of the Rune
broken.
of Death, and the symbol of her seal. Now, the vertical line coming down through the center of the Elden Ring is present in almost all of the Great Rune's symbols, and it really helps you when you're trying to align them all back together in Photoshop to form the shape of the Elden Ring. It's almost like
that's
a guide,
pretty cool.
and this is the end result. But how many Great Runes do you really need to complete the Elden Ring? Well, there would have been a point in your playthrough where the two fingers tell you that you only need to collect 2 Great Runes to earn the right to become Elden Lord and to restore the Golden Order. You might have thought this was strange, right? How can the Elden Ring be complete with just 2 Great Runes? Well, then you have to remember Morgoth guards the Erd Tree, and he's not an optional boss, and with his great rune you have 3, so apparently 3 is enough.
Because of that, I thought that there might be a secret ending if you get every rune, kill every boss by the trees. Maybe. But apparently there's nothing.
And the Elden Ring does start to look pretty complete at that point. In fact, even if you get every great rune in the game and theoretically fully restore the Elden Ring,
nothing changes.
It's possible that it's still not really complete from a lore point of view. I mean, for example, in Farum Azula, there's an even bigger Elden Ring that has even more rings on it, if you count them all. Nothing explicitly mentions this mega Elden Ring in the game's descriptions or anything, so speculation is all we have. My best guess at this stage is that maybe this is some sort of primordial form of the Elden Ring. Since it has more rings, maybe this is something that existed in an earlier age. As for the roots on the design, I kind of interpret this as the way that this Elden Ring might have had its blessings filtered down to the world in a more natural way, perhaps.
Or the Elden Ring goes through the Earth Tree and through the Earth Tree roots.
Elden Ring will almost certainly receive DLC. The game's too popular not to, and it's Bandai Namco, of course it will. So I wouldn't be surprised, though, if in that DLC
I wouldn't mind Elden Ring
collect
2
more
instead.
great runes.
Like
From a gameplay point of view, it makes sense. There is a system for equipping great runes in the game, after all. But from a lore point of view, we do also know that there is at least one other great rune that we haven't found yet.
Rani's?
Rani's.
Rani is said to have cast aside her great rune.
Yeah.
So here at the Hold, we seek the whereabouts of the remaining 3 shard bearers.
There was a really interesting post a little while ago on the Reddit by user Flint von Everek, who proposed that Rani's great rune could have been hidden on the moon itself, which, I mean, it just makes so much sense. You can see it up there, and it makes so much sense considering who she is. It's an amazing theory and an amazing find. I remember noticing that shape on the moon so long ago in promotional material for the game, and it's crazy to think that this symbol might have ended up having a meaning like this. Another thing that we speculated about
Could be a
ages ago
stretch.
before the game was officially released was this line of dialogue from Margit.
Cower in fear of the night. The hands of the fell omen shall brook thee no quarter.
Now that the game is released, I think we have an explanation for why he says this. The hands of the fell omen might just be the Knight Cavalry. According to their armor, the Knight's Cavalry, who now wander the dim roads at night, were once led by the fell omen. That said, the set does make it clear that they used to be led by the fell omen, and that they're not anymore, I guess. So take that theory with a grain of salt, I guess.
Just crossbowing every
you
boss.
should always be taking what I say with a grain of salt, especially in these early days,
never.
as we're still all figuring out the lore. For example, since posting my recent Lore Explained video, I've developed my own theories further, and I've read and listened to some much needed criticisms. And unfortunately, I do think that there are some parts of that video that are just wrong. So to try and prevent some of those theories spreading, I've actually spliced out specific sections of that video in the YouTube editor. I still think the video is well worth watching. I still think it's got good fundamentals in it. But in case you have watched that video already, I'm going to take some time now to just update you all on how my ideas have changed.
Okay.
First off, there's a small part of that video where I call the Erd Tree a parasite. So, parasite was kind of the wrong word to use there. I think calling it parasitic kind of characterizes the Erd Tree as sinister, just for feeding off an energy source, which is wrong.
It could be symbiotic.
It's a tree. That's what trees do. In the words of Quelaag, another lore creator that I mentioned earlier, the Erd Tree is more symbiotic, if anything. I think symbiotic is a good word, because we know that the Erd Tree was symbiotic with one thing, at least, and that was the Great Tree. Root resin tells us that the Erd Tree's roots were once entwined with that of the Erd Tree, so it clearly was merged with it on some level. Now, in my video, I also put forward that the Great Tree was where the Crucible of Life was located, and that this Great Tree, and that the power source that it had, was likely what the Erd Tree drew upon for its power. Now, I don't necessarily think I'm wrong on this, but I definitely should have shown my reasoning a little bit better, so now I'd like to point out, if only briefly, that my main piece of evidence for the Great Tree being the location of the Crucible of Life is Crucible Knight Siluria's tree helm. This is a crucible helmet that features great tree ornamentation.
Yeah,
and to me,
different
if these
set from a
knights were
normal Crucible
fashioning their
knight.
gear after the great tree specifically, then that's a fairly strong connection between the crucible and the great tree to me. However, it bears mentioning that no item descriptions explicitly link the crucible with the great tree, so it's all indirect evidence. So I just want you to bear that in mind and come to your own conclusions on that topic. Next, I probably should have elaborated when I said that Marika killed the Fell God. She didn't. Rather, as per the one-eyed shield, it's believed that she killed the Fell God. Of course, other descriptions like Flame of the Fell God make it clear that the Fell God still lurks within the Fire Giants, and we'll go into more detail on that
Fire
later.
Giant.
At any rate, she certainly suppressed the power of the Fell God.
Seemed
You
like
could say
everybody
she
else is dead.
defeated it, but it's clearly still a force in the world. And lastly, I've removed the statement that Millennia and Mikola were born after the Shattering. This is probably the biggest thing I want to correct, and I'll correct it properly in my Demigods video. Basically,
Can't
in my
wait,
video,
actually,
I
excited
said
for
that
that
they
one.
were born after the Shattering because I was assuming that they were born from a single conjoined god after the Shattering. But of course, you can also choose to believe that they were born of Radagon and Marika before those two gods were conjoined post-Shattering.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way to tell.
I think it's more likely that the twins were born before the Shattering. This gives them time to grow up and interact with other characters and gain their fame, so that makes more sense. I also no longer really believe that the Divine Towers were built after the Shattering, and I've removed that point from the video as well. So thank you to those who critiqued me politely. I'm actually always...
I wonder how many things FromSoft didn't finish yet, because every patch we're getting, every big patch, we're getting quest events at it. Like the latest patch at the moment is 104, which added patches. That's a weird word. Added events for the patches, to the quest line of patches. And I wonder how many is gonna be added in the future, and if those gonna change some theories, some other things. The previous patch added much more than this, so this might be the last one, and they just left patches out because he's like the least, like this one of the smallest characters that gets a quest line. I don't know.
Happy to admit
Besides,
that
like
I'm wrong.
Bok.
I'm going to make more of an effort to have my scripts peer-reviewed in the future to avoid that from happening. But I'm not all-knowing. Not yet, anyway. I've still got a lot more that I can learn, and this kind of segues into my sponsor for this video, which is Audible. If you're looking to integrate audiobooks into your life, whether it's to learn or to escape, then you can listen to any one audiobook from Audible completely free.
You kind of can just listen to this video without
Simply
watching
head over
the
to audible.com
visual.
/VartiVidya or text VartiVidya to 500 500 and consider signing up. If you want to try an audiobook that I love, I'd highly recommend Fever Dream by George R.R. Martin himself. It's the story of Abner Marsh, a struggling riverboat captain who suspects that something is amiss when he is approached by a wealthy aristocrat named Joshua York.
York looked up, and their eyes met. Till the rest of his days were done, Abner Marsh remembered that moment.
Damn, 13
that
hours
first look
left.
into the eyes of Joshua York. Whatever thoughts he had had, whatever plans he had made were sucked up in the maelstrom of York's eyes. Boy and old man and dandy and foreigner, all those were gone in an instant, and there was only York, the man himself, the power of him, the dream.
So again, head over to audible.com /VartiVidya or text VartiVidya to 500 500 to start a free trial. Thanks to Audible for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching.
Thank you for making it. That's the biggest credit, is to the maker of the original. Don't ever give credit to me for reacting to videos, because that requires no effort, and everybody knows that. Anyway, this is very interesting. He did go through some corrections, as I suspected, but most of it is just something newer. And I can't wait for the Demigods video, because that's the most interesting to me. Like, if we get some Mikola lore, that's fine. I wouldn't avoid it. Interesting to find out, but I'd rather find out lore about a character I've met in the game. If it's a boss I've defeated in the game. it's more interesting to me, the character, to find out lore about the characters I had interactions with. So, like, I'm all for Millennia, but less so on Mikola. Also want to know why Margit appears so many times, and then it's Morgoth. I don't know. I want to find out. Anyway, thank you. Anybody who watched this, I appreciate it a lot, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to.